Hey guys, have you ever had a bad day? Now, I'm not talking just like a bad day, like, oh, we're out of peanut butter. No, I'm talking like a no good, very bad day, the worst kind of day. Have you ever had one of those? I've had many. Okay, so like a couple. Like when I was a young kid, I remember a no good, very bad day was I was on the school bus. It had just pulled into school, and I threw up all over the school bus. Kids were like trying to jump out the windows, and like girls are like, I feel like the grossest person alive. I'm the gross kid that threw up on the school bus. That was a no good, very bad day. As an adult, I got COVID, and that was a really bad several days. And car repair for $2,000, that was a no good, very bad day. We all have these bad days, and maybe for you, you have a lot of them that are just no good, very bad days. So today in our series, POV, we're going to talk about what do we do when there's bad days? Where is God when there's bad days? Does God just disappear? Is he angry at us? Is that why we're having bad days? Well, to do that, we're going to look at one of the worst days the universe has ever seen. We're actually going to talk about one guy who had the absolute worst day that humans have ever had, and is a guy by the name of Job. Now, Job was a wealthy farmer. He had lots of animals, family, big family, and he was just a really blessed guy. And he loved God. He loved God with all of his heart and soul. But then he had the worst day ever. Here's what happened. First thing that happened was all of a sudden a messenger comes up to Job one day, and he says, all of your oxen and donkey have been stolen, and all of the workers have been killed. What? This is wealth. Like, guys, this is not a pet. This is like half of his wealth has just been stolen, and all of his workers have been killed. And that was a bad day. But then it got worse. All of a sudden, another messenger comes up to Job and says, Job. And Job goes like, what? What could possibly be going wrong now? And he goes, all your sheep just burned up. What? What do you mean they burned up? It literally says in the Bible, like fire just like came out of the sky and just engulfed his sheep. His sheep burned up. All the shepherds burned up. It's like roast mutton everywhere. And Job lost everything. And then another messenger comes up and says, Job, these raiders came and stole all your camels. Not like the football team, the Raiders, but like thieves came and stole all of his camels, killed all the workers. So Job is now broke. All of his wealth is gone. And then the worst thing happens. The house that his children, his sons and daughters are having a huge banquet in, collapses and kills all of his children. I'm telling you, there is no one that has had a worse day than Job. There's not. I think if I was Job, I would be mad. I'd be angry at God. I'd be angry at everyone. I'd be like, oh, this is the worst day ever. But that's not how Job responds. This is crazy. This is how Job responds. I want to read this to you. This is found in the book of Job, chapter 1, verse 21. It says this. Job says, naked I came in from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. So, the first thing that we see is that God is blessed by Job. He is praised by Job. In the midst of all this difficulty, all this pain, all this loss, all this suffering, Job still says, God is good. See, this is what Job knew. See, Job knew that just because bad things happen doesn't mean that God isn't good. I want you to write this down. I want you to write it just like this. God is good no matter what. God is good no matter what. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel when I'm having these bad days, it's like, what? If I'm having such a bad day, is God good? I have news for you, and Job knew this. God is good. Even if you're having a bad day, God is still good. Just because something bad is happening doesn't mean he's bad. It just means something bad is happening, but it doesn't change that God is good. Then what happens next for poor Job is he starts to receive advice and starts to hear from some other voices. Now, his friends start giving him advice, and his friends have terrible advice, like just terrible. And they tell him, like, first they like blame him, like, what did you do to tick God off? And they just start giving him all just this terrible advice. And because of these voices that start speaking into Job, Job starts to actually doubt God. And he goes from this idea that God is good and God is deserving of praise to starting to doubt and getting angry. Maybe you hear voices too when you're having a no good, very bad day. Maybe it's your family, and you try to tell them about your bad day, and your parents are like,
"That's not a bad day. You're just a kid. You don't know what a bad day is."
Thank you. I didn't know we were judging them. Or maybe someone was being mean to you, and your friend's advice is like, "We'll be mean to her." Thanks. Now I'm the bully. But the worst voice is when the voices we start to tell ourselves, the voices that say, "You deserve this. You are ugly. You are stupid. You are fat. You are whatever." We start to listen to these voices instead of listening to the truth that God has to say. But here's what I want you to write this down. Write this down. God's voice is the one that matters. God's voice is the one that matters, not anyone else's. Not your friends, not your family, no one else. God's voice is the most important voice. And God's truth says that you are loved, you are chosen by Him, you are good. And you know something? Even though these bad things are happening, God says that, like, He is never going to leave you. God's voice is the one that matters. But Job starts to doubt, okay? Like we all might some days. And starts to question. And God decides to use this moment to remind him of His truth. This is what it says in the book of Job, chapter 38. And this is God. God just starts delivering truth to Job. And what he starts to say is, "Then the Lord answered Job out of the storm. He said, 'Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge?' Brace yourself like a man." Okay, there's something I never want to hear from God. I never want to hear God say, like, "Hey, I'm going to talk to you like a man." He says, "I will question you and you will answer me." This is God talking. Now, God is not doing this to be mean, because God then goes on to say, "Where were you, Job, when I put the sun and the moon and the stars in the sky? Where were you, Job, when I put the oceans in there and I created the animals? Where were you?" And Job's like, I don't know. See, what Job had done was he had started to make his problems out to be this big and his God out to be this big. And then God goes, "I am not small. I am big and I am mighty. You made your problems out to be big, but God's like, your problems are small and I am big." That's what God did in this moment. And it's what Job needed to hear. And it's what you need to hear. I'll end with kind of like this thing. Sometimes this is what we do. We have these bad days, and it's kind of like a storm comes in, and all these gray clouds and dreariness comes in, and it's like all of a sudden it feels very dark on our bad days, and it feels like there is no sunlight, and we feel like the storm has just chased the sun away. But on the other side of those clouds, the sun is still shining. The storm, these clouds are not bigger than the sun. The sun is so much bigger. And just on the other side of those clouds, the sun is still doing what it does. It's warming and providing light and hope and energy. And that's what God is doing. Just because we're having a bad day and maybe we can't see God, maybe we can't feel God in that moment, doesn't mean He's not shining. We can trust God and God's wisdom in the good and the bad. And that's the last thing I want you to write down, is we can trust God and His wisdom in the good and the bad. Whatever you're going through right now, God is still shining, He is still good, and He wants to walk you through your no good, very bad days. Don't give up, don't doubt, but take heart. And if you don't believe me, believe Job. Because after God, kind of took Job to school, God gave Job everything back. He gave him new animals and more children and everything, and everything was restored to Job. But Job just had to get through that no good, very bad day, and so do you, and so do I. But while we're going through it, let's not go through it alone. Let's go through it with God, because He is ready and waiting to walk with you. We love you guys. Have an amazing week, and we will see you next week.